Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Her Story Online Summit, March 8th, 2026. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. So, let me tell you a little bit about what the Her Story Circle is all about. We are a global platform that is dedicated to amplifying the voices of women from all walks of life. We believe in the power of storytelling to inspire, to educate, and to connect individuals, fostering a world where every woman's story is heard and valued. Our mission is to create opportunities for women to share their experiences, to build communities, and to drive positive change. So, today on International Women's Day 2026, this virtual event is celebrating the achievements and exploring the challenges that women face. Through inspiring speeches, insightful panel discussions, we will be sharing stories from all over the world. This year's theme is Voices That Shape the Future. Women rising through story, power, and possibility. And we're going to be focusing on the critical roles that women play in shaping the future of our world. We expect a lot of people to be online watching globally, and a lot of speakers representing diverse backgrounds and industries as well. So it gives me great pleasure to be here to open this event and launch. So every hour, we will have 4 speakers sharing their stories and then a panel discussion. We have 3 sessions in the morning and another session in the evening for our UK and Europe speakers as well. So my presentation for you today is called The Most Dangerous Questions Humans Are Afraid to Ask. So let me ask you a question. It sounds simple, but nobody ever asks it. And even fewer people answer it. And the question is this: what are we actually doing? Not you, not your 5-year plan, not your productivity hacks or your self-care era. I mean us, the whole human species. 8 billion people working, scrolling, producing, competing, arguing, loving, surviving. All of us moving very, very fast. And here's the uncomfortable question: what are we actually doing? Because if you zoom out far enough, it looks like humanity is sprinting and sprinting very, very fast, efficient, relentless, and somehow sprinting nowhere in particular. And that realization is deeply unsettling. Think about how most of us live. We wake up tired, we rush into schedules, we work jobs many of us never dreamed of having. To pay for lives we barely have time to live, to impress people who are just as exhausted as we are. And somewhere along the line, we've started measuring human worth in numbers, productivity numbers, income numbers, follower numbers, performance numbers. We've invented systems to organize society, but those systems become so powerful that we've stopped questioning them. We call them success. But if we are honest with ourselves, something feels off. Because deep down, many people feel a quiet discomfort, a strange restlessness, a feeling that something about the way we live does not quite match the way we are built. And we often label that feeling as burnout or anxiety or failure. But what if it's really something else? What if it's not a personal failure? What if it's a biological signal? A signal that something about modern life does not fit the human nervous system. For most of humanity's history, we live very differently. Humans evolved in communities. We moved in our bodies every day. We experienced real silence, real conversations, real belonging. Our lives followed rhythms, day and night, seasons, community gatherings, shared effort, shared survival. Now compare that with modern life. Many of us spend our days sitting still, looking at these rectangles I'm presenting from, working at speeds our brains were never designed to sustain. We are more connected now than ever, but many people feel more alone than ever. We have infinite information. We are bombarded with information, but very little wisdom. We have convenience, but very little fulfillment. And this creates a strange contradiction. We live in the most technologically advanced society in human history, yet millions of people feel deeply disconnected from meaning. Now, when people hear this critique of modern life, they often assume something. They assume the systems exist because a handful of people designed it to control everyone else. But the truth is actually more complicated. The system exists because it feeds on something very human. It feeds on our fears. It feeds on our insecurities, our need to feel important, our fear of insignificance, our fear of falling behind. And when people are disconnected from others, power concentrates very easily. Because a disconnected human is easier to control. A distracted human is easier to influence. A tired human is easier to manage. And slowly, very slowly, without anyone officially announcing it, we created a world where people are constantly busy, but rarely fulfilled, constantly stimulated, but very rarely present, constantly connected, but rarely seen. So let me ask you that question again. The one we almost never stopped long enough to ask. What are we actually working towards? Because if the destination is endless productivity, that's not progress. If the destination is constant comparison, that's not success. If the destination is a society where millions of people feel empty despite having everything they were told to want, then maybe the problem is not the people. Maybe the problem is the question we've been asking. For generations, we've asked, how do we produce more? How do we grow faster? How do we scale bigger? But maybe the important question humanity needs to ask next is much simpler. How do we become human again? Imagine the hundreds of years from now, future generations looking back at our time. They will see extraordinary technology, artificial intelligence, global communication, space exploration, medical breakthroughs, but they may also ask something else. They may ask, with all that power, did humans become wiser? Did we become kinder? Did we become more connected? Or did we simply become more efficient at running faster? Inside systems never stopped to question. We never stopped to question. Because progress should not only be measured by how fast we move, it should be measured by the kind of life we are moving towards. A future worth building is not just with smarter machines. It's one with more meaning, more dignity, more connection. And maybe the most powerful step any of us can take is simply to pause long enough to ask the question most people avoid. Not how do I get ahead, but what kind of world are we actually creating together? Because the future of humanity will not be decided by the speed of our technology. It will be decided by the courage of people who are willing to stop long enough to ask, where are we going? Where are we actually going? And maybe, just maybe, that question is the real progress. That is where real progress begins. Thank you. So it looks like my next speaker has already come to join us. I can see that she is in the waiting room, but is not connected yet. So we'll give her a few minutes to come in. She might have to go out and come back in again. So let me just give her some instructions. Okay. Here we go. Hello, hello. Alicia,
Hello, can you hear me?
I can see you, I can hear you, but I can't see you on video. And I suspect something is hogging your camera. You might have another app that's open.
Okay, just a
Okay, there we
moment.
go. I see you now. Hey, how are you?
Wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. You are our second speaker. We're really excited to have you with us. I'm going to exit and the stage is yours. Introduce yourself, tell everybody where you are, and thank you so much for sharing your story with us today.
Thank you, Gertrude. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Melissa McDowell. I'm a physiotherapist based in the USA. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about how our shoes have been lying to us, and we have a opportunity to learn and make some changes that can improve our foot health and our overall health. So I'm going to go ahead and try to share my screen. Okay, hopefully, Gertrude, you can confirm if there's an admin in here that the PowerPoint is working. Okay, we're just going to run with it. Oh, there she is. Were you able to see my slides?
I could put it back again.
Okay, no problem. I just wanted to confirm before I started talking.
Okay,
Thank
yeah,
you
no,
so
I can
much.
see it. Put it back again and I'll
Awesome.
put it
Thank
in.
you. Okay, here we go.
There we go.
Okay. So, again, thank you for attending my session. Again, Dr. Melissa McDowell, a physiotherapist based in the USA. A huge passion of mine is preventative health and sharing information that can help to support well being. And in the last few years, I've worked with a co author and partner, Dr. Courtney Conley, on a book project that is about walking, feet, and shoes. And so today I want to share some of the knowledge that we gained over that research project about how modern shoes are part of our health epidemics. Your shoes are lying to you. When you lose connection to the ground and you use over engineered footwear, we start to lose connection with our own body. It's a shocking statement, but I will boldly say everything you've been told about shoes and walking is often incorrect. And we have a really strong opportunity in this day and age to change that, to share information that is correct, that is science based, and can help us make healthy choices, not only for the health of our feet, but for the health of our body and our communities. Misinformation is quietly costing us our health, and there are so many opportunities for us to make changes. This isn't a problem that's going to happen in the future. This problem is happening today. The most important health technology you have access to is something that most of us have been trained to ignore, and that's your feet. There are so many myths about what's healthy and what isn't in this area of health and science. And it is really one of my callings as a scientist, an educator, to help share information that can help you make choices to improve your overall health. Shoes have had an interesting place in society since their invention thousands of years ago. They were initially designed for protection. Then they advanced to being for insulation. Then they advanced to signal your status in society. And today, shoes still signal our status. In some of our professions, they are part of the uniform. There's misinformation all over the place that they should be highly cushioned or super stable. And shoes should help stop us from doing things like pronation. It is shocking how much misinformation is out there. And my goal today is to help you make great decisions when selecting your next pair of footwear and looking with a different lens about what's in your closet. Did you know that over 60% of adults are wearing the wrong sized shoe? So if you let that sink in and think of your coworkers or your family members or those who are close to you, your walking group, your book club, more than half of those individuals are probably wearing shoes that don't fit their foot correctly. This is because it's a misconception that our feet stop growing as we age. And honestly, the older and wiser you get in this life, the more likely it is your shoe size will change. Additionally, one third of adults over 40 experience foot pain, and it is the second largest musculoskeletal complaint globally, next to low back pain. So let's let that sink in for just a moment. If low back pain is an epidemic that plagues us globally, foot pain is the second culprit. While we're at it, and I want to bust a few of these myths for us before we get further into the topic today. It's very common to think that 10,000 steps are the correct number of steps to get health benefits and check the box. And that's a baseline, almost a basement for walking. It's surprising when many learn that this is a hangover from a 1960s Japanese pedometer marketing company. So during the 1964 Olympics in Tokyo, there was a huge push toward health and wellness in the public sector, and the pedometer was created. The pedometer could only go up to 10,000. And so it was a mechanical element of the design of the product that created the 10,000 step a day benchmark. This is not a scientifically backed number. And I would encourage you that if you are starting to consider that as a benchmark or something that you need to achieve, please let me help share information that will reroute that interest. That 10,000 step a day myth is another one on top of the shoe myths that I hope to really help you provide science backed information and actionable steps after this talk. So, what is happening? Modern shoes do not allow our foot to communicate with our brain. And when we think about what the role of the foot is as we go through these lives, The foot's job is communicating where you're at in space, what type of surface you're walking on. Is it hard? Is it soft? Is it threatening? Is it friendly? Is there a pebble you need to step over? Is there a curb you need to step down? And unfortunately, modern footwear silences this communication from foot to brain. Now, there's a lot of information between the foot and the brain that also is impacted. And what's important to think about is when we wear shoes that do not allow this communication, that compensation comes at a health cost. And that is not just at the health of your foot, it's at the health of your entire body. When we think about the inability to receive a message, the lack of communication from foot to brain, it becomes not just a lower body or lower extremity problem, it becomes a total health problem. So, as we consider this, think about your foot. If you have the ability right now to look at your foot, if you're not wearing socks or shoes, a bare foot wants to engage with the world and explore it, just like our hands do. A bare foot should be in a position where the toes are able to splay, which is able to open up where there's space between each individual toe. Your foot shapes the way you live, but your shoes shape your foot anatomy. I'm going to say something a little controversial right now. Babies are not born with bunions. If you have a bunion, it is something that has adapted over time. And most likely, our footwear and our foot health habits are to blame. If your foot is constantly being put into shoes that are ill fitting, that are maybe too short or maybe not wide enough, or don't allow your toes to splay or elevate your heel, or worse yet, have a pointy toe or a stiletto, you are shaping your foot anatomy. The change in that foot anatomy changes your health. And I'd love to share some ideas today so we can move on from this problem. The bottom of your foot has over 200,000 sensory endings in it. Its job is to give you information about how you're interacting with the world, where your body's at in space. It tells you about your balance. It promotes your walking or gait mechanics. When we start to lose that sensory feedback, that communication from foot up into the kinetic chain into the body, it can increase our injury risk. Our feet also, on top of being sensory organs, need to be strong. There are over 30 muscles and 26 bones in the foot. There are tons of joints. And that sophisticated anatomy is uniquely designed to help propel us forward, catch our balance when we need support, and help us stand with tall posture. When we select shoes that don't respect our native foot anatomy and we change not only the shape, but the function of our feet, health problems ensue. But there is a solution to this problem. So, what I want you to do is try to listen to that foot. So, even if you're seated right now, go ahead and try to put your feet on the ground and just close your eyes for a moment. If you're able, go ahead and stand. I'd like you to experience how the foot is interacting with whatever surface you happen to be seated on or standing on. Your foot is giving real-time information of your joint position, your pressure, the safetiness, the sensitivity of that surface to your brain. If you muffle this communication, it's trying to cook dinner wearing a mitten. It would be very difficult to chop the food, to prepare the food, to measure the spices accurately. If you are muffling the communication from your foot to your brain, it's trying to have a conversation wearing a pair of earplugs. You cannot get the message through. So oftentimes modern shoes are muffling that communication, or worse, removing our communication from the world around us to our brain. And there are some very specific culprits: cushioned shoes, overly supportive shoes, shoes with high heel stilettos or pointy toes, men's dress shoes that have narrow toe boxes, an elevated heel, and very rigid footbeds. These are types of shoes that mute the signals to our brain and make it more difficult for us to connect to our environment with awareness. But we can solve this. So if you haven't tried this already, I'd encourage you to play along with me. Take off your shoes and take off socks if you're wearing socks as well, because socks tend to bring our toes into that more narrow position. And I'd love for you to play this experiment with me with a truly bare foot, maybe even just one. So if you've achieved that now and you have socks and shoes off, take off your shoe, and place your foot softly on the floor. And I want you to close your eyes and engage with something we in science call the tripod. The tripod is the big toe, the little toe, and your heel. And these are the points of contact that facilitate standing, posture, walking, gait, pickleball, trail running, all of dancing, all of the things we love to do as upright humans. So as you're playing with feeling the tripod, you can even feel the tripod and seated if you prefer. What I want you to do is feel the ground beneath you. With those 3 points of contact, you're reorganizing your nervous system. You're reorganizing your postural system. And I'll show you in just a minute how your kinetic chain and the biomechanical linkages of your body start at the foot and work all the way up to the top of your body and to your mood, your emotion, your state of wellness, and how you engage in the world. So if we are able to put our feet, if we are able to put our feet in a better shoe, in a safer space, in a shoe that allows us to engage with the ground, it will allow us to reorganize ourselves. I just briefly mentioned the kinetic chain. Our foot talks to our fascia. The fascia is the connectivity highway throughout our body that organizes our posture. It speaks to pelvic floor and abdominal contraction. It supports our spine, and overarchingly, that calms our nervous system. I would really challenge any of you who are female or choose to wear high heels out there who are listening. How organized does your nervous system feel when you're wearing a teeny tiny stiletto and a pointy toe box? And yes, those shoes have been thought of as glamorous in society, or a way to show status, or a way to show, a brand that you love. But that tiny platform with pinched toes is very difficult for your nervous system to organize. Nothing works in isolation. The foot talks to the fascia talks to your posture tells your nervous system if you are safe or not. So we can think about coming back to regulating our nervous systems through that tripod, through the ground contact, through creating a better foundation of posture from the ground up. So when we think about being on unstable ground, that doesn't just mean high heels with pointy toes and little stilettos. When we think about cushioned footwear, the move in shoe engineering, trainers, recreational shoes, tennis shoes, fitness shoes, walking shoes, to have huge pillows of cushion, elevated heels, pronation control, stability control, all of these features also isolate or remove that communication from the bottom of your foot to your brain. So our ability to make healthier shoe choices is in our hands. And now that I've told you what to avoid, let's talk about what you can do. We want to restore the tripod. We want to restore our ability to receive all of that sensory information from the foot to help us have better posture, have less pain, and organize our nervous system. When we think about our foot's ability to sense the surface it's standing on, we have a few criteria that I would consider to be non-negotiable. The first is the shoe should have a wide toe box. I mentioned it earlier, your toes want to splay. We should have space between each individual toe. That allows us better engagement of the muscles in the foot, which again, through the fascial chain, allows us to engage our pelvic floor, our core, our spine muscles, making our support structures of our total body more engaged. Second, we want to wear shoes that have a lower heel to toe drop. So heel to toe drop is the height that your heel is elevated above your ball of your foot. The flatter, the better is a great rule of thumb. Third, you're looking for a thin and flexible sole. I like to teach individuals you want to be able to twist that shoe a little bit like you're wringing out a wet towel. And the last one, which I would consider to be nearly more important than every other, is that you should find a shoe that is the correct size. If you're wearing the same size of shoe you were wearing when you were 17 years old, I would encourage you to have a professional shoe measurement in a shoe store, and you very well may be surprised that your foot size has changed. So those criteria are: you want to be able to go back to getting that neurologic input from the bottom of the foot, go back to feeling the tripod of big toe, pinky toe, heel, wear a shoe that is the correct size via measurement, a wide toe box, a lower heel to toe drop, and the shoe should be flexible. With that, we know that health cannot be purchased. It must be practiced. We deeply recommend my co-author and I from my book project. This is one of the messages we've been trying to share with everyone. We highly recommend that everyone spends at least a little bit of time every day barefoot. You don't need technology and rubber between your foot and the surface you're walking on. Because when women and others connect with the ground beneath us, we don't just walk differently, we're able to live and create different types of impact in our lives. So, to sum it up, the way you move shapes the way you live, and choose those shoes with wisdom. Thank you so much for listening today.
Absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing this. Gosh, what a
Thank you.
to take putting on shoes for granted. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So we're going to bring on the next speaker and then we'll have our panel discussion at the end, okay? So thank you so much for sharing. All right, our next speaker is also coming to us from the United States. Megan, the ball is now in your court. Thank you so much for coming. I'll ask you to introduce yourself, tell everybody where you are, and we will love to hear what you have to share today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Gertrude. I really appreciate this. I'm coming to you from the Detroit, Michigan area in the United States. And my name is Megan Fucciarelli. I'm the Authenticity Amplifier, and I'm so excited to be joining you. I want to share a story with you because I'm truly blown away that I'm the mother of an amazing human and a retired school superintendent. See, those two identities, motherhood and leadership, are often treated like they don't belong in the same sentence. And the story I want to share with you today leans into my own struggle with this dichotomy. My journey of a professional mother did not start on a stage like this. It started in a frozen parking lot in Chicago. The kind of winter cold where the wind cuts through your coat like you're not even wearing one. I was sitting in my car, the engine was idling, and I was staring at the building where I was about to interview for a job I really wanted. My hands were shaking, partly from the cold, but mostly from the decision I was about to make. I leaned over and opened the glove box of my car. Inside, between my car registration and a stack of old oil change receipts, was a small jewelry box. And inside that box was my wedding ring. I hadn't worn it in months. See, I was divorced, and I was also pregnant. But before I stepped out of that car, I slid the ring onto my finger. Not because I was married, but because I knew the story that ring told. It told the story of a stable woman, a respectable woman, a woman whose life looked acceptable by societal standards. That ring wasn't protecting my reputation. It was protecting everyone else's comfort with my story. And in that moment, it became my silence. But that moment didn't come out of nowhere. Years earlier, early in my leadership career, someone pulled me aside and gave me advice that stuck with me. I can still hear it today. They said, "You're going to have to decide what you want, a family or a leadership career, because you really can't have both." I remember smiling politely in that moment, nodding, acting like I understood, but inside I was thinking, why not? Why is leadership framed as something that requires us to leave parts of ourselves behind? Why is motherhood seen as a liability instead of a strength? And yet, the more I move through leadership spaces, the more I realize that message wasn't unique. It was everywhere. Women were praised for working harder, but questioned if they prioritized family. We were encouraged to lead, but only if our leadership didn't make anyone uncomfortable. And slowly, without realizing it, I began to absorb those expectations. So by the time I was sitting in that Chicago parking lot, ready to enter for my interview, I already knew the rules. During that interview, someone looked at me and asked a question that still echoes. Do you and your husband plan to start a family? Now, legally, I knew they weren't allowed to ask that, but socially, it happens all the time. And in that moment, I made a choice. I smiled and said, well, yes, eventually, even though I knew I was already pregnant. But no one else would have known. I wasn't showing, but I knew. And I knew that telling the truth might cost me the opportunity for the job. So I edited myself. Not because I wanted to lie, but because somewhere along the way, I had learned something many women learn very early in their careers. Some truths make people uncomfortable. And uncomfortable women are often labeled too emotional, too complicated, and too risky. Well, I got that job. And after I got the job, something interesting happened. Every single morning when I parked my car, I opened my glove box and slipped that ring onto my finger. And every evening when I left work, I slipped it off and tucked it back into the jewelry box. It became a ritual, a quiet moment of shape-shifting. One morning, I forgot to put the ring on. I remember my heart racing as I looked down at my hand to realize it wasn't there, and I ran back to the parking lot just to grab it because I was terrified someone might see me without it and start asking questions. But it wasn't just the ring I was avoiding questions about. I avoided conversations about pregnancy. I kept my personal life very vague. I continued using my married name long after the marriage had ended. I wasn't just doing my job when I was there. I was managing perception. And the truth is, millions of women do this every day. Women wear pantsuits to appear more authoritative. We soften our emails so we don't sound too direct. We measure every word in meetings so we're not labeled aggressive. We're told to bring our whole selves to work, as long as the parts we bring make everyone else comfortable. There was one moment during that time that still stays with me. I had just come from a doctor's appointment. It was the first time I heard my son's heartbeat. I walked out of the office holding the ultrasound picture in my hand, and I sat in my car. As I looked down at the picture, I started to cry. Not because I wasn't happy. I was overwhelmed with love. I had suffered multiple miscarriages before, and I knew that this was my opportunity to be a mother. But I also realized something painful in that moment. The person I loved most in the world, who wasn't even physically outside of my body yet, was the same person I felt I had to hide to keep my career moving forward. And I remember thinking, how is it possible that the thing that brings me the most joy, the person I've wanted more than anything in this world, could also be the thing that makes me look less professional? And that's when I began to realize this wasn't just my story. Research from Cornell University shows that mothers are significantly less likely to be hired than women without children, even when their qualifications are identical. And once women are in the workplace, another pattern appears. Studies show women receive more feedback about personality than performance, about attitude, about word choice, about clothing attire, instead of what their job actually entails. Instead of hearing things like, you do great work, women often hear, you're a little too intense. Can you calm down a little? Or you should smile more. Or maybe even, try to be less emotional. You make people uncomfortable. Research also shows women spend significantly more time managing how they are perceived at work. Imagine how much more time we could spend doing what really matters if we didn't have to worry about how other people are seeing us or perceiving us. Not just doing the job, but managing tone, managing appearance, managing behavior, trying not to be too loud, trying not to be too ambitious or too visible. Because the truth is, most of us aren't hired into systems that silence us. We slowly learn how to silence ourselves inside them. For me, the turning point came the moment my son was born. The second I held him, something inside me shifted and a quiet voice said, "No more pretending." I realized something profound in that moment. If I wanted my son to grow up believing he could be fully himself in the world, then I had to model what that looked like. So I shed the ring. I reclaimed my maiden name and I stopped telling half truths in rooms that weren't ready for my fullness. And something remarkable happened. I didn't fall apart. I didn't lose credibility. In fact, I became a better leader, more honest, more compassionate, more courageous. Because when you stop performing for approval, you start leading with truth. That transformation followed a pattern I now call the AWE framework. AWE stands for awareness, wisdom, and empowerment. And I believe it's how voices, especially women's voices, begin shaping the future. Awareness is the moment we recognize the invisible rules we've been following. For me, awareness came when I realized I'd been editing my identity just to belong. Maybe for you, it looks like hiding your accent or downplaying your ambition or shrinking your voice in meetings. Maybe it's pretending you don't care as much as you actually do. Awareness is the moment we see the system clearly. Wisdom comes when we realize those rules were never written by us. They were built from assumptions about who belongs, who leads, who speaks, who stays quiet. Wisdom allows us to question those assumptions. It allows us to ask, whose standards am I trying to meet? And are those standards actually mine? And empowerment is the moment we choose something different. Not perfection, not rebellion, but authenticity. And authenticity isn't weakness. It's what leadership looks like when courage finally shows up. Today, my son is 15 years old and he is unapologetically himself, bold, curious, compassionate. And I believe part of that comes from watching me, even though one of the most powerful decisions was made just after he was born. Because the voices that shape the future aren't perfect voices, they're honest ones. They're the voices brave enough to stop editing themselves just to make others comfortable. So I want to leave you with one question. Before you judge someone, before you hire someone, before you promote someone, before you decide who belongs in the room, ask yourself, who did they have to edit to be here? And more importantly, who are you editing to be accepted? Because when we create spaces where people don't have to silence parts of who they are, we don't just change workplaces. We change leadership. We change families. And ultimately, we change the future. Let's amplify authenticity. And thank you so much for listening.
Wow. Thank you so much, Megan. Oh my goodness. Just listening to you speak, I can so see how we have all done this somewhere in our career in some capacity or another.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
Thank you
absolutely.
for honoring yourself, for putting your son first, the most beautiful thing that you have. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, we have a beautiful lineup of speakers. Megan, I will bring you back online when we do the Q&A, okay?
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. What an incredible morning and a beautiful start to our International Women's Day speakers. I just feel so humbled to have managed to connect with these phenomenal women. And our next speaker gives me great pleasure because she is a very good friend of mine, coming to us this time, not from the United States, but from my home country, New Zealand. Linda, welcome, welcome, welcome to the stage. Unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and tell everybody where you are. The stage is yours.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I'm live from all the way back from New Zealand, Nelson to be exact, which is a beautiful little town in the South Island, which is considered the sunniest place. So I'm a post-separation identity coach, and I want to talk to you about how to quit faster and why we ace relationships. Raise your hand if you ever stayed in a relationship longer than you should have. And keep it up if you knew it wasn't right for you, but you stayed anyway. I think we've all been there, right? Most people, they don't stay because they love too much. They stay because they don't know how to quit, and they don't know when it's the right time to quit and to let go. We've been taught how to fight for love, right? We've been taught how to never give up. Yeah, never give up. Keep holding on. And we've been taught how to forgive. And in New Zealand, we have the saying, she'll be all right, right? But nobody teaches us actually how to walk away and when to walk away. And not knowing how to quit, that could cost you years. What if quitting faster wasn't actually a weakness? What if quitting faster was actually a really valuable skill? And what if most people in the room know how to actually ace? We ace. I will tell you what we ace stands for. W, it's your walk away power. And it's not just about leaving, but it's about being willing to. And asking yourself the question, if you stopped trying right now, would the relationship still stand? If you would stop overgiving, overextending yourself, and adapting to your partner, if you would stop all of this, would the relationship still be there? Or would it collapse? And if it collapses, it was never balanced. E stands for embodiment. Embodiment means your behavior matches your standards. If you say you value respect, you should require it. If you say you want consistency, you don't negotiate for crumbs or make it look okay. Yeah, there is a saying, and I really love that one. And I use that a lot now. These things I'm asking for, it's not an expectation. It's a necessity to be in my inner circle. And that's just being true and honest about your standard and not allowing that to negotiate, not allowing that to come down to accommodate someone else's world. And that's so important. You cannot say you want secure love while tolerating insecure behavior. And embodiment, that ends performance. You're not trying to impress. You're not trying to accommodate. You're just being. You're being who you are, and you're sticking to your standard. A stands for awareness. You probably guessed that one. This is where most people miss it. Awareness means noticing early, paying attention. And I'm explaining my partner to my friends? Am I finding excuses for their behavior? Am I managing their emotions? Am I working harder in the relationship? Am I the one giving, accommodating, planning, making sure things are working out? If you are exhausted, you are over-functioning. And I learned that the hard way. Over-giving, saying yes when you actually want to say no, or paying attention to the many times you say, no worries, but really, it did bother you. It hurt your feelings. And you start harboring all that resentment. Dysfunction survives on over-functioning. C stands for courage. And I don't mean that dramatic courage. The courage I'm talking about, it's calm, it's grounded, it's leveled. It just says, you know what? This doesn't work for me. I need consistency. I won't carry this alone anymore. And most people skip courage and go straight to resentment. But courage is the middle. And it's also the most authentic piece. Courage is the invitation for the other person to rise. It's your moment where you're making them aware, hey, something here isn't working, and I'm inviting you to rise and join me. E, evaluation. After every interaction, ask yourself, do I feel calm? Do I feel respected? Do I feel chosen? Or do I feel anxious, confused, over-responsible? Maybe your body feels contracted, like you make yourself smaller. Chemistry without safety is not love. It's a nervous system activation. And I say that again because that one is an important one. Chemistry without safety is not love. Sorry. It's a nervous system activation. I just take a minute to cough. Sorry. There was a moment I remember. I was in my own home and I felt completely alone in that relationship. And I remember thinking to myself, if I would just ask for less, if I just stop complaining, if I just don't make it that hard and stay calm, laid back, relaxed, if I just lower my standard and make it all okay, maybe it will work. Maybe it will get better. And I was thinking about it for a while. But I wasn't being loving. I was being afraid. And I was abandoning myself. Well, I was okay to drop everything for me to make the other person feel okay. And the day I stopped compensating, stopped overgiving, stopped accommodating, I just stopped. And nothing rose. Nothing joined me up here. And that was a really hard pill to swallow. It wasn't the breakup that hurt. It was realizing I had been holding it together alone. I was abandoning myself in the process. And I became a person I couldn't even recognize anymore. But that day, I learned how to ace. You don't need better luck in love. You need stronger self-leadership. You need stronger standards, stronger boundaries, and be okay when people fall away. Be okay when people turn. You are the most important person in your life. Secure people don't back. Secure people don't perform. Secure people, they evaluate, they observe, they pay attention, and they make the decision based on that. Not with drama, not with big arguments, just quietly, comfortably. Observing, knowing, and being okay with just dropping it all. And they quit faster. Something doesn't accommodate or is not meeting their standard. They're okay with just dropping it. And if it's rising, it's rising. And if it's not rising, it was never meant to be part of your life. And that's okay. Tonight, I want you to do one thing, and one thing only. When you feel yourself over-functioning, stop. If you feel yourself over-giving, stop. If you feel yourself accommodating, constantly adapting to someone else, and I don't mean, when you go back and forth and you're accommodating each other sometimes, but you are the one accommodating all the time. Stop. Just once, stop. Stop initiating, stop fixing, and stop explaining. And watch what rises to meet you up here. And if nothing rises, you've got your answer. We don't chase love. We ace it. Thanks for being here.
Wow. Thank you so much, Linda. What an incredible presentation.
Thank you.
As women, we are constantly chasing after love. Beautiful reminder for us to be present to ourselves. Thank you so much for that.
Thanks for having me.
Well, ladies, what a powerful, powerful start to our International Women's Day event. Thank you all so much for sharing your stories from such deep places. The knowledge that you have brought to the platform today is incredible. So we're going to open up the floor and have a forum. Unmute yourself so we can have a conversation and a discussion. With HerStory, we're not just wanting to share inspiring stories. We want to pick your brains, find out a little bit more about who you are, what inspires you, what has you speaking and sharing your story on platforms like this. And my first question for all of you, and we'll go around the room, and as I'm asking the question, formulate a question for each of you as well, so you can also contribute, okay? My first question for all of you is, what motivates you? What makes you wake up and say, I want to share my story? What is the reason why you are here, that you feel it's important for you to share your story with other women? And we'll start with our first speaker, Melissa.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies. I enjoyed your presentation so much. For me, I am called to share this story because as a physiotherapist, I typically see the impact after there are problems. So I think it's so important for us to take ownership, radical ownership of various parts of our health, to advocate for ourselves, to learn with correct science-backed information about what we can do to improve our health. And so as an educator and a healthcare provider, that's really what motivates me. And when I wake up in the morning, I just want to share true information with people that is actionable, is low cost, is something that they can make small changes that have very big impacts immediately. I think for so many of us, we live with pain or limitations, or we start stopping doing activities and suddenly it becomes this spiral. We're not quite sure how we ended up there. And I think oftentimes when we reconnect with our foot, we think about what shoes are we actually wearing, it can make a really profound impact. And so I just am so excited to be able to share that information across these platforms and encourage people to think twice before they put something on their foot.
Yeah, that is a real eye opener for me. So I experience high blood pressure. And every time my blood pressure is high, I go and get a massage and I get reflexology. And it's amazing how our feet actually communicate what is wrong, right? If you pay attention, and like you said, if you take your shoes off and your socks,
Yep.
your feet are constantly talking to you. Let's go around the room, ladies. We'll break down one person at a time. So we'll start here. Linda, anything?
Regarding with the shows and yeah, it's, I mean, you know, even grounding, right? Like as soon as you stand on the ground, you ground yourself, and you can feel it sometimes when I go to the beach. I even put my fingers in the sand. It's like, I'm probably, it's gonna help. I'm gonna earth myself. And it's funny, I grew up like that. My mom always said, like, you know, having new good shoes is the most important thing. You can always buy everything secondhand, but shoes have to be new. It has to be perfect for your foot, because if you're using other people's shoes, their foot is different, and the way the shoe is walked in is completely different. So yeah, I was pretty much very early on, you know, put into my awareness that shoes are very important. But it was beautiful to see your presentation, Melissa, and yeah, just understanding a little bit more about it, you know, and just the background. So yeah, definitely got to make that one more important again.
Yep. Kind of coming back to that conversation, because I think, as you said, we hear it at different times in our lives. You know, if you're a mother, if you've had pregnancy, everyone says, oh, your feet are going to change. You're going to have to change shoe sizes, or, you know, wear different types of shoes. And then if you do have that experience, that after that season of your life, a lot of people will go back to wearing the same size shoe they wore in high school, or not really thinking about their foot as much. And so it's a nice sort of reminder, one of those calls to action of being like, you know, this information, but let's bring it back to the forefront of the filing cabinet.
Yeah, totally. Thank you for that. That was really good.
Yeah. Megan.
Responding to Melissa?
Yes. We'll
Yeah.
go around the room one at a time.
Yeah, honestly, Melissa, as you were speaking, what came to my mind was I still really like shoes, right? However, I used to own a lot more shoes. And I remember I had a friend move me probably 20 years ago. They're like, how many do you have? And I think we counted over 100 pairs of shoes. And then my shoe size has changed, right? But there's still some shoes from back in the day that I love so much that I'll try and wear sometimes. And as I was hearing you talk, I'm like, oh, that's why they don't feel good anymore. I used to be able to run down the hallway in these 6-inch stilettos. How come I can't even put them on anymore? So no, it definitely reminded me of, I can still love shoes, just be more mindful of what draws me to a shoe instead of just the aesthetic.
And we also teach a concept called the 24-hour shoe clock. And so if perhaps you're someone who has to wear a fancy shoe or chooses to wear a fancy shoe for an event, and there's a lot of strategies to counteract the position that your foot is being put in the rest of your day, right? You have 24 whole hours. So if you're going to an evening reception, you're going to wear a fancy shoe for a couple of hours. There's a lot of things you can do to sort of like counteract those positions if you do have shoes like that you can't part with. It's also important for individuals who have to wear a shoe like that for a uniform. So throughout our research for our project, we worked with a bunch of flight attendants for major international airlines that shall remain nameless, but the shoe uniform standard is still problematic from a health standpoint. And so that is something that I think future state may very well need to change, because there are a lot of foot and back problems that come from some of those uniform requirements for footwear.
Right.
So true. Now, I presented on a topic, and you all weren't online yet, but my presentation was the most dangerous question humans are afraid to ask. And I wanted to challenge us today with looking at how we are living and where we are going as a species, right? that was the uncomfortable question. What are we actually doing as the human race? And one practical step that individuals can take today to reconnect with meaning in a world that's driven with productivity would be for us to learn how to be present to each other. I've started talking to random strangers. I make a point to meet one person I don't know, whether I'm on the street, I'm in the bank, standing in a queue. Every time I walk into an elevator now, everybody's looking to the door. I face the other way. I talk to people, I crack jokes. But I'm making a deliberate effort to meet one new person every single day for the next 365 days. And I challenge all of you to do the same, because really the magic happens in the moment. So I've lived in this building. I live in a massive apartment building in Melbourne. It has got 2 towers. I think there's about 600 apartments here. But there's this really cute guy who I keep seeing, and we keep seeing each other. We keep checking each other out. He says hi, I say hi. He has this cute little dog. He's got this Swiss sounding accent. I think he's European. We've never really talked, right? So yesterday I was going to meet my kids, and we live on the same floor. So he lives on one side, I live on the other side, but we always bump into each other at the same time. I'm thinking, why do I keep bumping into this guy, right? So I see him, he's holding loaves of bread, like 6 loaves of bread. And I was running to the lift and he held it for me. And we started talking again, the same thing. We don't introduce each other. We just talk about random stuff. Anyway, I asked him, where'd you get the bread from? And he happened to have done some bread making course, and he made extra loaves and he's giving it all away. And he's like, by the way, would you like a loaf? I'm like, yeah, sure, I'd love a loaf. I don't eat bread. So he said, okay, I'll leave a loaf for you at reception. By the way, what's your name? I thought, okay. So I told him my name. I told him my apartment number. And he said, by the way, my name is, oh God, what is his name? I've forgotten. I have it written down. Anyway, so I got this beautiful loaf of bread yesterday. I did eat it just to honor him, and it's bloody good. But this is somebody I have seen for 2 years, right? I know he likes me. He knows I like him. I know he's single. I thought he was gay. And I've suddenly made a connection with a really nice person who lives in my apartment. We're on the same floor. We see each other almost every day, haven't talked. So being present, the magic happens when you are in the moment and you're present to the people around you. So because you guys didn't listen to my talk, I will ask myself questions as we go along. Now, let's go to you, Megan. Your story about wearing that wedding ring to protect your professional reputation was incredibly powerful. Why do you think so many women still feel that they must edit parts of themselves to succeed professionally?
A lot of that comes from societal biases and societal expectations. And then as women or any other marginalized group who experiences that oppression or that story that's told to us, we tend to internalize that, right? Whether it's us as women, whether you're of a particular race, a particular religion, you have specific messages that are embedded within society, either conscious or unconscious, but they're embedded within society and we internalize them. And the more I've shared stories about being a woman in a profession, whether it's moving the wedding ring, as I shared today, whether it's my story of having multiple miscarriages and feeling like a failure as a woman because I couldn't produce life. There were so many pieces that I've experienced as women and as a woman that when I share those stories, other women say, I felt that way too, but it's not internal, like we believe it to be true. It's that society tells us that for so long that we internalize it.
So true. And this is the power of storytelling, right? Our stories are more common than they are uncommon. And it doesn't matter which part of the world you're from, what life experiences you've had, this is when we find that we are all the same. So thank you for sharing that. We'll go around the room again, ladies. Do you have any questions to ask Megan?
Yeah, I could really relate with Megan's story, and having experienced that also multiple times at work, where when you actually, share a part of you, which is true, a lot of times I really found they took part of it and then use it against me, like I can't cope with work. Well, that situation had nothing to do with work, my performance, or anything. And it really taught you have to lie. There's just certain parts you can show and certain parts you're not allowed to show. And it was really weird because I was seen crying in the toilet and it was about a breakup. And then she was like, "You're too stressed at work. We should extend this." And, and we'll put all those extra things. And I was like, fuck, sorry. But she used that against me, even though it had nothing to do with work. And yeah, you learn very early, you have to edit yourself. You have to edit yourself. You have to tell people what they want to hear, not what's really true. But I must say right now, even though I'm leaving the position, I made a beautiful experience where I didn't have to edit myself. I could be all of myself, and my boss, which was a woman, would still see me as valuable and important. And, and it was so bad. I had 2 weeks of just crying for 2 weeks straight. I don't know why. It just all came out. And I said to her, wow, this meant so much to me that you could see all my emotional mess and still value me as a person and as in my performance and at my work. So I do feel I'm seeing a change in that. At least that's what I'm telling myself, and hope it's going to ripple more out.
Right. And that's the whole impact
you
of the work.
Up like that. You give other women permission to do the same. Sorry, Megan, I cut you off there.
No, that's okay. But that's the impact, right? It's not, I think there's so many of us out here right now saying you need to be authentically you, share your authenticity, be you. But in reality, the work needs to be with organizations and leaders to allow people to be authentically themselves, right? So your new boss, your now leader, allowed you to be your full authentic self, right? It wasn't that you necessarily shifted and decided to share more of yourself. It was that you saw that your whole self would be accepted and valued. And that's where the switch needs to come in is, yes, it's important for us to share our stories. And it's important for those stories to resonate, to encourage everyone in different positions, especially leadership positions, to know how to embrace and accept everyone's imperfectly perfect selves, right? We're all perfectly imperfect, but how do we embrace that and allow and amplify the authenticity that lives in all of us?
So true.
I think for me, it's I work in a large healthcare organization. And so what we're seeing is we have 4 generations in the workplace. Our administrators and our executives are baby boomers. And then most of the mid-level individuals, like my era, are Gen X. And then we're hiring millennials and Gen Z. And I think what's happening in my industry is we're just seeing a shift in what's important to the new entrants into our workforce. And in healthcare delivery, we are absolutely being pushed to change because we have new healthcare providers coming in asking for pronoun variations on the intake forms and asking for, different types of marital status or relationship status when we gather demographic data. That the new generations are absolutely challenging the status quo in my industry. And I think it's wonderful. It's making many people uncomfortable at an organizational level. As you said, Megan, there has to be leadership, there has to be buy-in, there has to be an ability to amplify that and for it to be consistent. But I kind of feel happy to say it feels like a reckoning is coming because we are definitely seeing that the entering workforce is demanding these changes.
That's beautiful. And they're probably more outspoken than our generation ever will be.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
I love it.
That's
I love
beautiful. That's absolutely
Curse.
awesome. Okay. So my next question to myself, based on what I had shared, is looking really at describing how modern burnout as possibly being a biological signal rather than personal failure. So I burnt out when I was going through my divorce. I ended up with congestive heart failure. But how can individuals begin to listen to those signals before they reach a crisis point? So I ended up collapsing in a rice field in Bali, Indonesia, supposedly on holiday, supposed to be taking it easy. And when I look back now, the warning signs were all there. I wasn't feeling well. I had these headaches that were consistent. And then I developed a dry cough that only came at night. And I was living in Albuquerque, New Mexico at the time. And I would go to this emergency center. They would give me cough mixture, headache medication, and send me home. I never asked anybody to check my blood pressure because I have abnormally low blood pressure, even when I'm pregnant with my kids, right? So it wasn't on my radar to say, please check my blood pressure. Anyway, I was talking to my kids one day on Zoom, and my daughter looked at me and she said, Mom, you don't look okay. You need to come back home. Just come back to New Zealand. Come and see your doctor. Something is wrong. So even the people around you can see the signs of burnout before you see it yourself. And I am so grateful that I listened. I came back to New Zealand. When my doctor checked me over, my blood pressure was in the 200s. He didn't understand how I didn't have a stroke on the flight home. So we know the warning signs. We feel the warning signs. We push them away. I could have preempted all of this. It has taken me 7 years to get back on my feet and start to feel normal again. Not quite there. I have days when I still feel very lethargic, very tired. There's some days when I just have to sleep the whole day, and it's not easy to recover your health after something so major. So just a warning to all of you ladies, if you're going through something emotional, check in, go for those checkups, ask for tests, even if you don't know what is really wrong with you, but trust your body. The body gives us the signals way before you collapse and burn out completely. So to go back to my questions to you, Dr. Melissa, many people have worn the same style shoes for decades. What is one simple change that people could make immediately to improve their foot health and just overall well-being?
The biggest non-negotiable feature for me for a shoe is a wide toe box. And you can tell if a shoe has a wide toe box if the shoe is shaped like a foot. And many fancy shoes are not shaped like your footprint. And if you hold up your fancy shoe and you hold up a shoe with a wide toe box, so you compare it to the anatomy of your foot, it does not match. So the biggest non-negotiable is that it respects the anatomy of your foot. And a great example is if you were to try to cook dinner wearing mittens and your hands were all stuck together and all you had was your thumb and you're trying to chop and do spices and all the things, it would be very, very difficult. And that's similar to if you wear a shoe where the toes are pinched together, because you're not able to be in the ideal anatomical position for recruiting the muscles, for giving the vessels and the nerves enough space to do their job. A particularly interesting aspect of that wider toe box, if you're in a wider toe box shoe and you can wiggle your toes and there's space in between each, it helps you with co-contraction of pelvic floor, which is very important for women of childbearing age, pre, post. Incontinence and pelvic pain is such a big challenge in women's health right now. And so that's the one thing, if they take nothing else away from my conversation today, is the wide toe box in the shoe.
So we should actually put the onus on shoe designers to make, because really all these designer shoes, the shoes that look nice, they're all pointy. They're not designed for real comfort. And I remember reading a book once that said most shoes for women are designed by men.
Yes.
They designed them that way so they could catch us. You can't run when you're wearing those damn heels. Let's go around the room, ladies. Megan.
Yeah, no, as I'm thinking about, I almost want to go to my closet and do an inventory of my shoes right now.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, I
My
think
sweet,
my
my
gym
sweet
shoes
husband just went
probably
and got
have
it
the
for me.
wide toe
Yeah.
box,
So
but
this is
none
the
of my
wide toe
other
box.
shoes do, I don't think.
Yeah. And when you look at it from the bottom, it looks like a footprint, right? It looks like the shape of a foot. And I wear a size 11, so this is a very large shoe. I'm 6 feet tall, but
Oh my
that's
gosh.
that's the silhouette that you're looking for.
Wow. Wow.
Tell me more about the going in the closet, because I hear this from patients so often, and it is such a important part of assessing what you have in your, you know, like you said, you had hundreds of shoes, Megan. You said hundreds of shoes when you moved that.
Yeah, I honestly, I kind of want to go into my closet and be like, okay, so this is my most commonly shoe. This is I believe my gym shoes are probably a wide toe box. I think those are probably what we would call acceptable. But I don't think any of my
Functional.
functional, thank you.
Functional.
Um,
No good, no bad. Just
okay.
functional, traditional, or minimal.
Got it. Yeah. I'm thinking that most of my shoes that I wear to be cute are not going to be very functional.
No, that is so true. Linda, any questions?
No, probably not questions. I mean, I've been looking at shoes. My son has quite wide, little bit like duck feet, a little bit. So I'm really looking at shoes. What shoes, and he's very particular what he likes, what he doesn't like. So, back in the day, and they probably also exist now. There were those socks where you could put every toe in its own compartment. I used to love those socks. They looked so cute.
They're still around.
I was
Yeah.
gonna say, I still have a pair. Are
Mhm.
those things that would be helpful or not helpful? Are those considered functional or not functional?
Yep, because if you have the socks that have the individual spaces for toes, it allows the toes to spread or splay. Versus if you wear a really tight sock, it's going to do that mitten idea, or like almost like you have a rubber band around your toes. So yeah, those
Do you
are.
wear toe socks?
I don't like them. So I wear
Yeah.
a functional shoe, but I tend to wear a sock and I live in a winter climate, so I need to wear socks a lot.
Yeah.
I tend to wear a sock that's more like a wool blend and isn't very elastic. So then it allows my toes to splay and I'm not being restricted by the sock when I'm in a functional shoe. So it's a foot sock shoe interface when you think about it that way.
I love it.
Linda,
Okay, so
kids tend to have wider feet. Sorry, Gertrude.
okay.
It's a normal part of development. How old is he, if I may ask?
He is turning almost 8 now.
Yeah. And so until their feet get stronger, that tends to be what sort of like essentially lifts the arch and creates a little bit more bony structure to the foot, which typically doesn't happen until after puberty, even, especially boys with testosterone and growth hormone. And so if his feet are cute little wide duck feet right now, what I would recommend is the device that measures your foot length or width is called a Brannock device. It was created in the US 100 years ago. It has not changed design in 100 years, but that's the thing you put your foot in at the shoe store that gives you the length and gives you the width. And
Yeah.
what you could do for him would be to take a true width measurement at a shoe store, and that will help you decide if he needs a wide sized shoe or if for him a wide toe box shoe with a normal width would be more comfortable for him with his little developing feet.
Thanks. I'll give
Yeah,
that a
of
go.
course.
We've got people chiming in online, a couple of comments on LinkedIn. Thank you for LinkedIn user. Your name is not there. And then we have another person who said, this is awesome, ladies. I'm sorry I had to head off. So it's really nice to see that we are reaching people through LinkedIn as well as we go along the way. So I have my last question now for everybody. First one is for me with regards to my presentation. And the question is, if future generations were looking back at us today, what 3 choices humanity could make right now that would show that we chose wisdom over speed? What are 3 choices? So I would say for us to reconnect as human beings, number 1, like I said, be present to the people around you. Number 2, think about your work. Are you loving what you do, or are you just doing it for the money? A lot of us get caught in professions where we're on a treadmill, we're making money, you're trying to get a promotion, but you hate what you're doing, but you do it every single day. And then number 3, if you're trying to make money, are you doing it for yourself or are you doing it to keep up with the Joneses? A lot of times we compete with our colleagues, our families, our peers. And we put ourselves under duress. We take out credit cards. We buy designer handbags to keep up with the Joneses. Who are you really doing it for? And is it worth it? So those would be the 3 things that I feel we could do, the 3 choices humanity could make right now that could show that we are choosing wisdom over speed. My last question for you, Melissa, is your talk connects foot health to the entire kinesthetic chain of the body and even the nervous system. Could improving how we walk usually influence our mental well-being as well as our physical health?
Absolutely. There's fantastic research supporting boosting mood, reducing stress, reduced risks of dementia at particular step counts. There is really good data on reducing depression symptoms as well as the lifetime risk of developing depression based on certain amounts of walking. If you have foot pain, it is very difficult to walk. And so when we connect the dots, it is such a pain epidemic, right? If low back pain is the worst and foot pain is second, we have some serious work to do. And so much of foot issues come from ill-fitting footwear. That I really believe that making healthy shoe choices and prioritizing foot health can be a keystone to walking more, and then walking more is really what triggers all of those mental health benefits. So I strongly, encourage everyone to think about very tiny actions that can be helpful, which is assessing that footwear, making sure it's the right size and length, considering a wide toe box. And then the other one is we talk about micro walking, which is 5 minutes or 500 steps, a way to interrupt sitting. That has great improvement from a lot of the neurotransmitters and blood markers that tell us about stress. It reduces cortisol levels. It gives you a dopamine push. And so those would be the ways that I can tie it into boosting our mental health and our well-being.
Fantastic. Thank you. Last question for Melissa, ladies. Or comments.
So I wonder if, do you encourage I don't know if it's a new trend, but the wristbands or the alerts that you get, like, oh, you've been sitting too long, or, oh, you need to drink water now. I just wonder if you encourage those, if you encourage something else to help us all stay on top of our walking and water intake and everything else.
As a provider, I think it's an easy way to help people become more aware. I think we also see the flip side of it where people become too reliant or they become anxious or fearful about the alerts. And so I think you have to know your audience, right? If you're somebody who has a digital calendar, schedules your flights online, is somebody who's very tech comfortable, I think the biometric devices are fabulous and we can set them to interrupt our sitting, remind us to drink water and walk. And it can be really helpful. If you're someone who technology isn't something you're as comfortable with, or it makes you feel anxious, or it's more stressful, there are a lot of really good ways to just be diligent as a human in an analog fashion. One of the biggest success elements is the concept of self-efficacy and intrinsic motivation. So if you're doing it for you, you're much more likely to keep doing it. If you're doing it because I told you to as your physical therapist, I'm an extrinsic, person in your environment. So I see it both ways. If you're a tech person, it's wonderful. If you're a low tech person, there's a lot of other ways to create those reminders.
Great. Interesting. Megan, my last question for you, and it's going to be a kind of a combo. You introduced the AWARE framework, awareness, wisdom, and empowerment. Which one of these stages do you find women struggle with the most when reclaiming their authentic voice?
So it's the awe framework, and it's transforming shock into awe, some opportunities. So just to help people remember, it's AWE. I believe for women, it's the last stage of empowerment. And the reason for that is because, again, kind of going back to what we spoke of earlier with societal perceptions and what we hear in society and people telling us that we're too loud or we're not what we need to be or we're not fitting in the box, that level of empowerment. And it's not necessarily the ability to be empowered or the ability to step up. It's the level of confidence that sometimes we lack as women to do that because we've been told for so long that it's not appropriate or we need to, the one I hate the most, know our place, right? And I think that's the piece, because awareness, we're aware of what's happening, almost hyper aware to some extent. We know what needs to happen. That's the wisdom stage, but it's the empowerment stage of actually taking the action to make it shift. And a lot of times that's outside influence as well, right? If we need to have a job because we need to provide for our family, we're less likely to step up and speak out against things that are happening because we're afraid of losing our job. In the US, we're a protected class, and there's always ways around that. So I've seen women, including myself, either be demoted or removed simply for speaking up. So I think that that's a very large piece, and it's not necessarily for women to be empowered. It's for people to allow women to be empowered, to amplify the opportunity for women to be empowered.
That's awesome. And then the last thing I wanted to ask you is, for leaders listening today, what are practical ways that organizations can create environments where women don't feel that they have to hide parts of their identity to belong?
Yeah, the first stage is simply having that awareness that it's happening and remove the shame and the guilt that's often associated with it. In today's conversation, especially in our global socio-political climate, there's a lot of shame and blame and divisiveness, whether we're talking about gender, whether we're talking about race, religion, politics, there's lots of divisiveness. And the very first thing is to remove the shame and the blame. If you acknowledge in your organization that you might have a good representation of both men and women in your workforce, however, when you look at your leadership team, it's almost all men, then you need to be able to say, ooh, why is that? Without feeling bad about it, because shame has no place in it, right? And saying, what am I going to do to take action to see it? So the first step is awareness and removing that shame and blame and guilt that's often there when we make that first realization. So that's the first step. And then the second step is actually making sure that if you have, this is a big one for me with organizations, if your values on your website or in your materials, your employee handbook say that you value equity and you value everyone's internal processes and everyone's voice matters in decisions, make sure that that actually lives true in your rooms, in your building, in your organization, on your teams. It's not just talking about it. You have to actually walk the talk. And for me, it's not just walking the talk, it's getting off the treadmill and actually taking action, right? Because we can do a whole bunch of stuff and be really tired saying that we're trying to make sure that women are equitably placed in leadership roles. However, if we don't actually take those action steps, that they stay there and they are heard and welcomed in that environment, then we're not helping anyone in society.
So true. Any parting comments for Megan, ladies?
I think that alignment is so key, Megan. I'm glad you brought that up, from the website to the materials to the business processes. And I think we have a long way to go to improve that. But I think the awareness is definitely getting better, at least in the corporate environment that I work in. So thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
I think, really creating that awareness, I think is so important. And you can see that a lot, people have all those great intention, but are they walking their talk? And it really has to come from above, right? Like, I mean, they're the ones who should role model and show that, we're living this. We're not just saying that, but we are living it. So, great reminder.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Linda, my last questions for you are your ACE framework: walk away, embodiment, awareness, courage, and evaluation. It gives people a structure for evaluating relationships. which step tends to be the hardest for people to practice? And how many people stay in unhealthy dynamics because they fear being alone? And can someone begin to build that self-trust needed to choose themselves without guilt?
I think lots of people stay in relationships. They're outgrew already. And I've seen this the other day. Someone made this comment about this lady talking about, when things are imbalanced in a relationship. And she said, I rather like clean pee off the toilet seat rather than being alone. Like, and it really just shows like, I think the missing piece is people don't truly love themselves and value themselves. And, where we come to the embodiment, like really embodying your values. You say you want consistency, you want someone to show up, but here you are dropping the bar below ground zero and further, right? To accommodate the other person, to make it okay. They're showing up with crumbs and probably get defensive if you're bringing it up. I think this is such a huge thing to really have your standard and hold it, and it really ties in with the walk away power, right? Like when you're holding it and you say, no, this is what it is. I'm not expecting that from you. This is a necessity to be with me. And it's okay. If you don't want to be that person, that's okay. And that's where the walk away power comes in, right? To say, you know what, if you don't want to be that person, that's fine. I've seen so many people, and it's not just, we often talk about man children, but men also experience that in women sometimes, she's like a little girl and not really having learned to stabilize her nervous system and all of that. And I think it really goes both ways, that we're really like, hey, I'm not your therapist, right? Like go and get a therapist like everyone else, right? Solve this over here. I'm here to hold space for you. Yeah, you're safe with me, but let's talk honestly about it and not deflect and not defense and not say, hey, this is all you and how dare you bringing this up? And yeah, and really being honest to yourself, when are you able to stop? Are you able to stop in your relationship? And is the other person going to rise to the occasion, or are you actually alone there? And I think it's also a really hard pill to swallow, because in that moment you're realizing you have abandoned yourself. You're not who you truly are anymore. And it's not easy, right? Like I've seen people, they're not doing self-development because they know as soon as I do that, I have to be honest to myself that my relationship is in shambles. So yeah. So yeah, I see that a lot, but I also see a lot of people, they want to do the work. They want to grow. They want to have better relationships, because it's just like any other muscle, tool, skill, right? We just have to learn it, get better at it, and improve. And once we do that, we can have amazing relationships. We can ace relationships, right?
I love it. I love it. Closing comments for Linda, ladies.
Linda, I really appreciate. Go ahead.
Go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Linda, I really appreciate the being able to walk away component, because I think there's also a piece there of you have to acknowledge that it can be difficult to do that, right? It's easier said than done, especially when you have those situations. So there are so many parts of your story that I was like, oh yeah, totally. And I can say for myself, with one of my relationships, I did say, this is not the expectation. This is kind of who it is. I think I used the word expectation, but it was in the same frame of what you were sharing of, this is just what I need. But what I shared is, here's what I expect. If you're not able to do that, I'm okay with that. You do you, I do me, I'll walk away. So I used the word expectation, but it was in the frame of how you mentioned it. And I will say that person really stepped up and said, okay, I realized I was not doing what you needed, and all I needed you to do was tell me what you needed. So sometimes it's that communication piece as well of, if we don't tell people what we need, they're not mind readers, right? So very much. Thank you.
Nice.
My question was, Linda, I have a 20-year-old daughter. What piece of advice would you share with a 20-year-old who's just in the early stages of making those, meaningful relationships?
Yeah. And yeah. since I have kids, part of me doing this is because of my kids, to learn early. And for a 20-year-old one, really learn about you first. Who are you? What's important to you? Learning about what healthy masculine, healthy feminine energy looks like. That, yeah, you want to have a man to lead, but it doesn't mean he's going to control you. It doesn't mean he's making decisions for you. It means he takes leadership. He plans, so you can kind of soften into your feminine energy, right? And I think for a 20-year, or for any children and kids growing up, learning about the nervous system. Your body will tell you. Your body will tell you if something is safe to relax, and it will really feel like like an exhale. Or are you like cringing? You super excited? It's buzzy. This is most likely unhealthy attachment, driven by dopamine release. Driven by the hit. And it can feel very exciting and exhilarating, but is it the right thing? And they say if you learned a lot of chaos early on, the right relationship will feel boring. And I think your body is really the best indicator, like learning yourself truly. What are your standards? What's important to you? What is important to you in a relationship? Are you okay to keeping your standard, even when it means you're losing people? Are you okay to communicate your boundaries? Yeah, even when you might get pushed back, or someone deflects, or someone is trying to turn it around on you. Are you comfortable with like, nah, you know what? This is what it is. And if that's not you, that's okay. You do you, I do me. But that's what it is to be in my journey. And I think just getting those young girls and also boys to be really authentically themselves and be okay with that. I think that's one of the most important things, to not, don't move the bar to be accommodating, to fit in, to be part of something. If your natural being can't be part of something, you don't want to be in there.
And the same thing Megan was saying in leadership, in work.
Yeah, editing, right?
Yeah.
If you have to edit yourself to be with someone, to be in a circle, it's not the right circle for you. Move on.
So good. Thank you for sharing that.
Wow.
That's wonderful.
Thank you all so much for coming online. It's just interesting how all of our topics were kind of interrelated in a weird way as well. Absolutely wonderful to have you on this panel to open up our International Women's Day event. Thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for doing
Thank you
this.
for having us.
Thank you.
And thank you to everybody who tuned in online. We will continue this summit on a different link. So we'll be going live again in about 10 minutes. We're going to take a 10-minute commercial break, but tune in again. We have another lineup of 4 speakers after this in 10 minutes time. Thank you so much, ladies. Linda, join me on the next link.
Thank you.
Bye for now, everybody.
Bye.